Hi, y'all. Welcome back to another sketchbook ritual where I pull tarot cards and then I paint in my sketchbook and I interpret the meaning of the cards and my understanding of tarot. And I almost didn't share this one. I pulled the three cards and they are rather intense. Three of the most intense, sometimes scary to folks, cards that you can pull in the tarot. And I knew exactly what it was. I knew what it was about as soon as I pulled it. And it's rather personal. And I'm going to get vulnerable and share it anyway and give you a peek into some of the stuff that's been stewing in my world and in my brain recently, well, and for years. So come paint with me. Okay, so the deck I'm using today is the Fifth Spirit Tarot, which is a deck created by another Portland local, Charlie Claire Burgess. And I love this deck. It's made by another queer person, and Charlie like reimagines the traditional tarot through like these lenses of liberation and identity and healing and collective care. And I just love that it centers queer and trans experiences, and it was perfect for this reading. So just to let you know, going into this reading, I pull three cards. All are reversals, and it's the Death card, the Ten of Swords, and the Tower. And if you know about tarot, like pulling these three cards, feels, these are often associated like the three of the most ominous dark cards of the deck. There are three cards associated with sadness and ending and loss and collapse and transformation. And if I would have pulled these cards, I don't know, years ago, I probably would have it would have felt really different. I would have been like bracing myself for something terrible to happen and just being scared of, and I probably would have avoided even reading the interpretations too much more. But if there's anything that tarot has taught me is that these cards, pulling tarot cards, like they're rarely so literal. They're not predicting doom, but they're like invitations for reflection. And especially as reversals, it's often what's happening beneath the surface and naming emotions and experiences that are difficult to put into words. And oftentimes I'll go into a reading and think I'm pulling cards for something totally different. So I did go in doing a past, present, future. It's an easy three card pull reading to do. And that's what I did here. But I was thinking about my creative practice and my art business and something totally different. And I pulled these three cards and I knew right away this is other stuff that's been percolating for me and not related to that whatsoever. So just to give you some backstory about me, I I have been estranged from my parents, my family, much of my biological family for over 17 years now. And that was not an easy decision to go no contact with them, especially so long ago. Like, I think people talk about going no contact a lot more now, but I did this a long time ago and it wasn't an easy decision and it was very hard and it was something that I had to do. It was my parents, very conservative, raised born again, Pentecostal. When I came out as queer, and then I married my trans partner, that was it was hard. And then also dealing with mental health stuff and addiction in my family, and abuse and trauma. And it was a decision that I had to make, and I made it. Especially, I made it with a lot of support. I had an amazing partner. I had a lot of therapy. Um, Fast forward, I'm now, July was a year since my mother died, and it's, of course, has brought up a lot of this stuff. So I almost, when I pulled this, I planned to record this and do this reading for this art spread, and then I pulled it, and I was like, oh God, this is really vulnerable. Like, how much of this am I going to talk about? But here we are, and I am sharing this. Really because it's not as dark and not as sad and horrific as all of this is, and it has been, and it was. But I'll get into that. So the first card, death reversed. So despite the name, the death card, this card is often so misunderstood, and it's rarely about physical death. And so even this card isn't about my mom's physical death. It really is, for me, it's representing like the ending and the transformation that happened and the grief that happened with uh, the death of our relationship many years ago. And so it's also about the death of what I expected and I believed a relationship with your family, and that I was taught that it's ingrained in us that what family is supposed to look like and your identity as a daughter and that relationship with my mother. And the truth is, I I started grieving her a long time ago, not the day that she died. And that's what I've realized in this last year, in the year since she died, that my grief, a lot of my grief happened years ago. And estrangement is it's unlike, it's just so hard to explain, but I mourned her while she was still alive, and the relationship itself had already grieved. I mourned the idea of what a family was supposed to look like a long time ago, and it was really traumatic, and it was really hard, and it was really painful. And I often wished for reconciliation and for accountability, and recognized that wasn't going to happen. And so I'm grieving the future that I imagined we might still have. And so when she died, it wasn't like one kind of ending. It was the ending of possibility itself. And there's no reconciliation that's going to happen, no apologies, no different ending. And so, as painful as that was, I can see also something else now, and that's like acceptance and not carrying um, that hope anymore. And actually, it's been really like, it's weird. It's been peace. It's been a relief in some ways. And so I think from like my like experience, um, it's also been about acceptance. So that feels transformational, and it feels like that's kind of like the past. This is the way that card is showing up for the past. And the present is the Ten of Swords, and it's another reversal, and it's another card that often frightens people. Of course it does. Oftentimes it's like someone lying face down with 10 swords in their back, and it symbolizes painful endings and betrayal and rock bottom and exhaustion and like feeling everything is fallen apart. But I always look at like this card, and oftentimes there's like some brightness of the sky and a reminder that like the darkness isn't permanent, and like the dawn will arrive. And and the Ten of Cards represents completion and cycles that have ended, and that there's nowhere. I mean, there's nowhere else to go. Like I reached the darkest part, and like it's all up, and really I believe that I have. Um, Not that there couldn't be other moments of pain in my life, but that this like the suffering and the grief, I've really experienced it. And what I'm realizing now, and that the present is that um, grief isn't one thing. It's not sadness. It's not anger. It's not longing, but it's also that relief and that peace is also here. And that I've been taught that grief should look a certain way. And I thought this last year would look a different way. And I almost felt guilty that I had this sense of relief. And, um, and that relief isn't the opposite of grief. Like, it lives inside that grief, and it's part of that grief. And also that I'm rewriting a lot of the stories I've created around this. So I'm rewriting the guilt and the responsibility and the part that I've been carrying that around the hardest parts of our relationship. And that really that I'm rewriting myself as less of a victim and more as like a survivor. And I really feel like, especially in the last few years, that I was so depressed and so sad for so long, and a lot of it was tied up in this. And then I really created this life of joy and love and connection and art, and I'm not seeing myself through that lens as much anymore as someone who more like someone who's thriving. So that brings me to the future, the Tower card reversed, and another card like another card with a reputation. Lightning strikes, the towers crumbled, people are falling. It's like upheaval, dramatic collapse. Um, and that's, I mean, it's dramatic. And and in reversal, again, I'm interpreting it like more internal and maybe less as a warning and more like here as a permission to let these old beliefs fall away, permission to feel like I'm letting go a lot of what I've believed a daughter is supposed to do, and um, someone mourning their mother, like how grief is supposed to look, and also that my life is going to be defined by the story of an estranged daughter and someone who was unloved by my family. Like my, it's really dark and personal, but my family was really horrible about me and said really horrible things about me, and I'm letting go of those stories as well. And that I recognize that like the tower is the archetype of family and of the daughter, and I'm leaving behind. I left behind the faith traditions that I was raised in. I left behind the conservative ideologies, the ideas around being a sinner, like doomed for sin and damnation. And I've dismantled those beliefs, and that I don't know, I just can see this spread as a whole. And instead of seeing catastrophe, I'm really seeing it through this lens of liberation. So the death reverse tells the story of like releasing of what I couldn't control. And then the 10 of Swords reverse reminds me that I have permission to put down the burden that I've carried for so long. And then the Tower reverse is inviting me to rebuild my life on a foundation that isn't these stories of pain and grief and loss. And that all these cards don't erase what happened, but instead, maybe they honor it. And also that that's not my whole story. The ending happened. Um, Really, the collapse began a long time ago, and that it was really hard for a really long time. And I grieved. I was grieving for a really long time, and now I can move forward. And instead of having a lot of sadness and a lot of burden, I'm having compassion instead of guilt, and like and freedom. Like I really feel like my life is one of liberation, and pain is not my identity, and I don't have to carry this lineage of darkness and trauma. And I'm not forgetting, I'm not minimizing or pretending everything is okay, but my life is not defined by that experience, and that I'm allowed to build a life that's bigger than my grief and bigger than my trauma. And so, uh, and this other thing that's happening that's been really unexpected is that I'm talking to my mom more than I ever have, and I'm remembering the good parts of her, and she, I'm just seeing this fuller picture of her, and it's allowing the good to come back, and some memories that I have had buried for a really long time, and remembering her in a different light. And so, okay, this is my rambling, um, personal reading. Thanks for listening and joining me on the sketchbook ritual. Have a great day. Happy painting, or maybe not so happy, but keep painting, keep creating, and I'll be back with another sketchbook ritual soon.